Once again, it's Ed from Exotic Blanks, here to introduce you to another new partner at Exotic Blanks. This time, it's Fool for Peppers. Brian has been making pen blanks for a while, but he just joined us and has decided to try to do some new and different things. So today we're going to cover one of the different things he's doing. We call them the Sportsupport blanks. I start off by drilling this on the lathe. And as you can see, as the drill bit is going in, I have ribbons coming out. One of the things you want to be aware of is what does it look like as you're pushing your drill bit in. What are you getting out of the pen blank? And if you're getting ribbons, it means that you probably have a good sharp drill bit and that you're advancing at about the right speed and everything is going about the way that it should. So when you see those ribbons, that's a very good thing, and that's the ideal thing to have happen as you're drilling your blank. These blanks are very nice, vivid colors. In order to make a polyresin blank with the vivid and separate colors, it's necessary to encourage the resin to set a little bit more quickly. As a result, the resin can be a little bit chippy when it's turned. So we're not going to try to drill all the way through this blank. I'll stop short of the end, then I'll insert the brass tube to be certain I've drilled deep enough. Then we will put the brass tube glue the brass tube into the blank, and I'll show you how I turn it around and take off the end on the lathe. So it's really pretty simple, but it's much safer and you don't crack out the back end on any of your blanks. Okay, I have put the brass tube in, and actually I've glued the brass tube in, and now I've repositioned the blank into the chuck with the end that is the closed end is sticking out, and I'm taking it off with a parting tool. In this case, I've made the image a lot larger so you can see exactly what's happening. Early on you can see I have not hit the hole, so I'm just taking off material here. And then I will continue to do the same thing again. This time I hope I go in deep enough, or far enough that I actually do hit the hole and take off the closed end completely, and that's what happened. So it's ready now to move on to the next step. The next step is obviously to turn the blank. These are polyresin, and they are a polyresin that keeps its color separate one from the other, which means that in order to do that, the artist has got to use a little bit more MEKP, methyl ethyl ketone. So the difficulty with that is that it does make the blank a little more prone to chipping. So you have to be careful how you turn it. As you can see, what I'm doing is using, first of all, a sharp skew. I am not a proponent of carbide tools with any acrylic, and particularly with this kind of acrylic, I would be very reluctant to use a carbide tool. I would use a skew or a high-speed steel gouge, either one of which should work pretty well. As you can see, I've had some chips on this somewhat intentionally so that I can show a little bit about how you get away from the chip. If you take your tool, your skew particularly, and go closer to the horizontal. Do not get it to the point where it's actually horizontal, but as you go closer to the horizontal, it works, for me at least, to remove any spots that I might have had chatter. Most of the time when you're getting those little nicks in the blank, what you're really doing is getting some degree of vibration from somewhere. So one of the things you want to do is make sure that your tailstock is tight against it. Actually, in this particular case, I turned this and I didn't have much trouble with it, but the tailstock was almost, it's there, but it's not doing anything. It was spinning, but just barely. Toward the end of the video, I tightened the tailstock and all my problems went away. There were no real difficulties with it, but it was something that as the blank vibrates at all, you're likely to get a little chip out. So what you want to do is make sure that you keep that vibration down. As you can see, everything I'm turning here is giving me ribbons. I'm not having any difficulty with it. And of course, if you want to, you can turn it down until it's close to the right size and then get out your sandpaper and finish it off with sandpaper. It's not something that I think is usually necessary, but if it makes you more comfortable, we all have to learn how to turn somehow, and if you learn how to turn when it's nice and fat, that's fine. Then when you get down to the thin and you get worried, it makes all the sense in the world to grab a piece of sandpaper if that works for you. So that's really all there is to it. It's not a difficult material to turn, and I will try to leave some of the noise in so you can hear when they're going right and when they're going wrong. But basically, I can't turn it for you. All I can do is make these videos and hope that you will get the experience and the practice and see enough here that it gives you some ideas about what you're doing. One of the things I say on the phone frequently is when you see it coming off the way that it's supposed to, then stop and figure out what you're doing. We all seem to analyze our mistakes. Why don't you analyze it when it's going well? So stop, think about what you've done. If you're getting off beautiful ribbons, figure out what it is that's making that happen. That hasn't happened all the time. We usually look at it and say, oh, I'm so happy I actually got ribbons. That's great, but figure out what you're doing and then you'll get them a lot more often. You can see here what it looks like when it's finished being turned, and I snuck in a picture this time of what it looks like when it's finished being polished and everything else, so that you know a little bit as to what you're aiming for here. They make a beautiful pen, so this is what the finished product will look like. The only thing we have to do from this point forward then is do the sanding, and as usual I'm going to sand with 400 grit, which is my 1-inch wide, and then I'm going to sand with 600 grit after that, and then I take it to the buffing station and do the buffing. When you do sanding, I noticed with this at least, I was sanding longer than I usually do, and so it became warmer than it usually does. Be aware of that. If it turns out that it's getting hot, make sure that you stop and let it cool off, or if you have to do wet sanding, I suppose that's okay too. The reason I'm not fond of wet sanding is, see those little marks in there? If you're sanding all the way across and it's white all the way across, you have done a thorough job. I don't know if that's the way that it works with wet sanding or not. I know it works beautifully with dry sanding, and that's always the way that I've done it. So if there's one that you favor, go for it. From my point of view, this just shows me that everything is now uniformly sanded, and I can move on to the 600 grit when I see that everything is uniformly white. So it goes from 400 to 600. The 600 is relatively quick. Just go back and forth a few times to make sure that the shine starts to come up, and you get rid of the scratches from the 400. And then it just take it to the buffing, and from there it's a couple seconds and it's done. So thank you for watching. This is Ed from Exotic Blanks, wishing you very good turning, and I hope you try these blanks. I think you'll really like it when you get a pen out of it. It's a little more effort than some of our other blanks, but it's very much worth the effort, and they're inexpensive, so if you do have a tragedy, it's a good learning experience. So good luck to you. Thanks for watching. Bye now.